The bedroom was dark except for the silver moonlight streaming through the window, casting shadows across Chioma's trembling body. She stood facing the wall, her hands pressed against the cool surface, her breathing coming in short gasps. Behind her, she could feel the heat of his body, close but not quite touching, the space between them crackling with unbearable tension. "Tell me to stop." Ezekiel's voice was rough, almost desperate, his breath warm against her neck. "Tell me to stop, Chioma, and I will walk away. I'll sleep on the floor. Don't stop," she whispered, and she felt him freeze behind her. "Don't you dare stop." His large, scarred hands came to rest on either side of hers against the wall, caging her in. She could feel the tremor in his fingers. This dangerous man who everyone feared was shaking because of her. "You don't know what you're asking," he said, his lips brushing the shell of her ear. "I've been trying so hard to be gentle with you, to give you time. But Chioma, God help me, Chioma." She turned her head slightly, enough to meet his eyes. Those dark, intense eyes that had terrified her 3 months ago and now set her entire body on fire. "Then stop being gentle," she breathed. "I'm not afraid of you anymore, Ezekiel. I haven't been for a long time." The sound he made was somewhere between a groan and a prayer. His forehead dropped to her shoulder, and she felt him struggling for control. "How did we get here?" he whispered against her skin. "How did I go from being the monster at your door to this?" Chioma's eyes closed as his lips traced a burning path along her neck. "Let me tell you," she said softly. "Let me tell you the whole story. Welcome back to African Love Chronicles, your favorite place for stories soaked in passion and soul-deep romance. If you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment to tell us your favorite part of the story. Your support keeps these love tales flowing strong. Thanks for always supporting us. Now grab your popcorn and let's dive in." The evening Lagos sun was setting, painting the cramped apartment in shades of orange and gold, but Chioma couldn't appreciate the beauty. She was too busy staring at the final notice in her hands, the words blurring as tears threatened to fall. "Final warning, payment overdue. Legal action will be taken." "Papa, what is this?" Her voice cracked as she looked at her father, slumped in his worn armchair, looking 20 years older than his 55 years. Samuel Okafor couldn't meet his daughter's eyes. His hands shook as he reached for the letter, though he didn't need to read it. He'd been avoiding this conversation for months. "Chioma," he started, then stopped. What could he say? That he'd borrowed money from dangerous men? That he'd gambled it away, trying to make more to save their family business? That he'd been a fool? "Papa, how much do we owe?" Chioma's voice was steadier now, though her heart was racing. At 23, she'd already been the strong one for too long. Her mother had died 5 years ago, and her father had been slowly falling apart ever since. "Chioma, I can fix this. I just need more time." "How much?" Samuel's shoulders sagged. 50 million naira. The world tilted. Chioma grabbed the back of the sofa to steady herself. 50 million naira. They barely made 200,000 a month between her father's failing electronics shop and her job as a primary school teacher. "Papa." The word was barely a whisper. "Papa, how could you?" The knock on the door made them both jump. It wasn't a normal knock. It was 3 heavy, deliberate pounds that seemed to shake the entire apartment. The kind of knock that said, "I'm not asking to come in. I'm announcing my arrival." Samuel's face went gray. No, it's too early. They said I had until." "Papa, who is that?" Another 3 pounds. Harder this time. Chioma watched her father stand on trembling legs. She'd never seen him look so terrified, and fear, cold and sharp, sliced through her chest. "Stay in your room," Samuel said, his voice barely working. "No. Chioma, please." "I said no." She moved to stand beside her father, lifting her chin even as her knees threatened to give out. "We face this together." Samuel looked at his daughter, his beautiful, stubborn, brave daughter, and wanted to weep. Instead, he walked to the door and opened it. The man standing in their doorway didn't look real. He looked like something carved from stone and nightmares. Ezekiel Nnamdi stood at least 6'4", his shoulders broad enough to block out the hallway light. He wore all black shirt, black pants, black boots, which made his dark skin seem even darker. But it was his face that made Chioma's breath catch. A thick scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw, puckering the skin and pulling at his eye slightly. Another scar cut through his right eyebrow. His face was all hard angles and sharp edges, his expression completely unreadable. His eyes, his eyes. were the darkest brown Chioma had ever seen, and they swept over her father with the cold assessment of a predator eyeing prey. Behind him stood two other men, equally large, equally threatening. Samuel Okafor. Ezekiel's voice was deep and rough, like gravel and smoke. Not a question. A statement. Why yes. Mr. Nnamdi, I was going to come to you. I have some of the money, not all, but... How much? 500,000. I know it's not much, but if you could give me another month. You've had 6 months. The words were delivered without emotion, which somehow made them more terrifying than if he'd shouted them. Please, Samuel's voice broke. Please, Mr. Nnamdi. I have a daughter. I'm trying. For the first time, those dark eyes shifted to Chioma. She forced herself not to look away, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. His gaze moved over her slowly, taking in her worn jeans, her faded university t-shirt, her simple face free of makeup, her natural hair pulled back in a ponytail. She saw something flicker in his expression, there and gone so fast she might have imagined it. Your daughter, Ezekiel said flatly. Then to Chioma, how old are you? That's none of your, Samuel started. 23, Chioma answered, cutting her father off. Her voice was steady, though her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. And before you ask, yes, I know about the debt. I just found out how much. One of Ezekiel's eyebrows, the scarred one, lifted slightly. And I don't know how we'll pay it. Chioma swallowed hard. But we will. Somehow. We just need time. Time costs money, Ezekiel said. The interest is 20% per month. Your father's 50 million has become 72 million. By next month, it'll be close to 100 million. Do you have that kind of time? The number hit Chioma like a physical blow. 100 million. They'd never escape. Never. There must be something we can do, she said desperately. Some payment plans, some. I don't do payment plans. Then what do you do? The words came out sharper than Chioma intended, her fear transmuting into anger. What happens if we can't pay? What are you going to do, break his legs? Kill him? Burn down our home? Would that make you feel powerful? Chioma. Samuel grabbed her arm. Don't. But Ezekiel held up a hand, and Samuel fell silent immediately. The debt collector's eyes were fixed on Chioma, and there was something new in them now. Something that might have been interest? You have fire, Ezekiel said quietly. Stupid fire, but fire nonetheless. Most people can't even look at me. I'm looking at you, Chioma said, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. And I'm asking you, no, I'm begging you, please don't hurt my father. This is his mistake, not mine, but he's all I have. If you want someone to punish, punish me instead. The hallway went completely silent. Even Ezekiel's men shifted uncomfortably. Chioma, no. Samuel tried to pull her back, but she shook him off. I mean it, she continued, her voice stronger now. Whatever you need. I'll work for you. Clean your house, cook your food, work in your office. I don't care. Just give us a way out of this that doesn't end with my father in a hospital. Or worse. Ezekiel stared at her for a long moment. Then, without taking his eyes off her, he spoke to his men. Wait in the car. Boss, one of them started. Now. They left without another word. Ezekiel stepped into the apartment and closed the door behind him. In the small living room, he seemed even larger, more overwhelming. Chioma had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Do you know who I am? Ezekiel asked softly. A debt collector. I'm the debt collector. In Lagos, if you owe money to the wrong people and you can't pay, they send me. Do you know why? Chioma's mouth was dry, but she answered. Because you're good at your job. Because I'm feared. He took a step closer, and Chioma forced herself not to back away. Because people would rather scrape together money they don't have than face me. Because I don't negotiate, I don't do favors, and I don't make exceptions. Ever. Then why are you still here? Chioma challenged, even as her voice shook. Why haven't you done whatever it is you do and left? Something flickered across Ezekiel's face again, that strange, unreadable expression. He turned to Samuel. Your daughter just offered herself to me to clear your debt. She didn't mean, Samuel started desperately. Didn't she? Ezekiel's gaze swung back to Chioma. Did you mean it? Would you really work for me to save your father? Yes, Chioma said immediately. Yes, whatever it takes. Anything. The way he said that word made Chioma's stomach drop. But she'd started this. She couldn't back down now. Yes. Ezekiel was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those unsettling dark eyes. Then he said something that changed everything. Marry me. The words hung in the air like smoke. Chioma was sure she'd misheard. What? Marry me, Ezekiel repeated calmly, as if he'd just suggested they have tea. Become my wife. Your father's debt disappears completely. Plus, I'll give him 10 million naira to restart his business. You're insane, Chioma breathed. No, I'm practical. He crossed his arms over his massive chest. I need a wife. You need your father's debt cleared. It's a transaction. You need a, Chioma's voice rose. You can't just buy a wife. I'm not buying you. I'm proposing a mutually beneficial arrangement. His tone was maddeningly reasonable. You get your father out of debt and provide him with startup capital. I get a wife. Everyone wins. Why would you possibly need a wife? Chioma demanded. And why would you want me? You don't know anything about me. I know you're brave enough to face me when your father was cowering. I know you're loyal enough to offer yourself in his place. I know you're smart enough to understand exactly how much trouble you're in. He paused. And I know that if you refuse this offer, your father's debt will be collected in less pleasant ways. It wasn't quite a threat. It was a statement of fact, which somehow made it worse. Chioma, don't listen to him, Samuel pleaded. I'll find the money. How? Ezekiel cut him off. You can't even make 500,000 a month. In 6 months, you'll owe 150 million. In a year, the math doesn't work, Mr. Okafor. You know it doesn't. Samuel's face crumpled because he knew it was true. There was no way out. Not for him. But maybe there was one for Chioma. If I say yes, Chioma said slowly, her mind racing, what exactly would this marriage entail? What would you expect from me? To live in my home. To appear with me in public as my wife. To maintain the household. And at night. She hated how small her voice sounded. Ezekiel's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened. Just a fraction. I'm not going to force myself on you, if that's what you're asking. You'd have your own room. Your own space. I need a wife in name and appearance. Nothing more. Then why bother getting married at all? That's my business. If you expect me to say yes, it becomes my business. Another long, assessing look. Then, surprisingly, a ghost of what might have been respect flickered across his scarred face. Fine, he said. My family has been pressuring me to marry for years. They think it will make me more respectable, more stable. I'm tired of the questions, the matchmaking attempts, the judgment. A wife solves that problem. So you want me to be your shield, Chioma said slowly. Your protection from your family. Yes. For how long? 2 years. After that, we can divorce quietly. You'll get a settlement, 72 million naira, and your freedom. Your father's debt will remain cleared. Chioma's head was spinning. This was insane. This was the most insane thing she'd ever heard. You didn't just marry a stranger, especially not a dangerous, scarred debt collector who looked like he could kill someone with his bare hands. But her father owed 72 million naira and climbing. But they had no way to pay. But Ezekiel Nnamdi was offering them a way out. But she'd be married to a man who terrified her. I need time to think, she said. You have 30 seconds. That's not. 25 seconds. After that, I leave, and the debt collection proceeds as normal. His voice was flat. 20 seconds. Chioma, don't, Samuel tried again. Be quiet, Papa. Chioma closed her eyes. Her heart was hammering so hard it hurt. This was crazy. This was absolutely, completely crazy. But what choice did she have? 10 seconds. Will you hurt me? She asked suddenly, her eyes snapping open. If I say yes, if I marry you, will you hurt me? Ezekiel looked her straight in the eye. No. How do I know you're telling the truth? You don't. 5 seconds. Chioma took a deep breath. Thought of her father. Thought of the debt. Thought of the alternative. Yes, she said. I'll marry you. The wedding happened exactly 1 week later. Chioma had expected. Well, she wasn't sure what she'd expected. A quick courthouse visit, maybe. A private ceremony with just the bare minimum of witnesses. Instead, she found herself standing in a small but elegant event hall in Victoria Island, wearing a white dress that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe combined, facing a man she barely knew while 200 people watched. It needs to look real, Ezekiel had told her 3 days earlier, when she'd asked why they couldn't just sign papers at a registry. My family needs to believe this is genuine. That means a proper ceremony. Your family? Chioma had looked at him in confusion. I thought you wanted to get them off your back about marriage? I do. But they need to believe I actually care about you, or they'll know something's wrong. He'd paused. Can you act like you're in love with me? Chioma had almost laughed. Almost. Can you? Something had flashed in his eyes then. Something that might have been amusement. I'll manage. Now, standing at the altar with Ezekiel's large hand holding hers, Chioma wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. The pastor was saying something about love and commitment, but she couldn't focus. All she could feel was the heat of Ezekiel's palm against hers, the weight of his presence beside her. He'd cleaned up well. His black suit was perfectly tailored, highlighting his broad shoulders and narrow waist. His hair was neatly cut, his beard trimmed. He should have looked civilized. He didn't. The scars, the intense eyes, the sheer size of him. No amount of expensive clothing could hide the fact that Ezekiel Nnamdi was dangerous. Chioma could feel the guests staring, could hear the whispers. They all knew who he was. What he was. What am I doing? She thought desperately. What have I done? You may now kiss the bride, the pastor announced. Chioma's eyes widened. They hadn't discussed this part. Ezekiel turned to face her, and she saw him hesitate for just a moment. The first sign of uncertainty she'd seen from him. Then he leaned down slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. His lips touched hers, soft and careful. Nothing like what she'd expected from a man like him. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. When he pulled back, Chioma's heart was racing for entirely new reasons. The applause was polite but confused. Nobody knew what to make of this wedding. Nobody except the bride and groom knew it wasn't real. The reception was worse than the ceremony. Ezekiel's family descended on them like a swarm of very well-dressed, very suspicious bees. His mother, an elegant woman in her 60s named Grace, looked Chioma up and down with sharp, assessing eyes. So you're the girl who finally tamed my son, Grace said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. How did you meet? Through my father, Chioma answered, which was technically true. It was unexpected. I'm sure it was. Grace's gaze shifted to Ezekiel. You work quickly. 3 weeks ago you told me you'd never marry, and now here you are with a bride I've never heard of. When you meet the right person, you know, Ezekiel said smoothly, his arm sliding around Chioma's waist and pulling her close. The gesture looked possessive and protective at the same time. Why wait? Indeed. Grace didn't look convinced. Chioma, dear, what do you do? I'm a teacher. Primary school. How modest. The word wasn't quite an insult, but it wasn't a compliment either. And your family? It's just my father and me. My mother passed away 5 years ago. Oh. Grace's expression softened slightly, the first genuine emotion Chioma had seen from her. I'm sorry, dear. That must have been difficult. It was. Chioma was surprised to feel a lump in her throat. She'd gotten good at not thinking about her mother, but sometimes the loss still hit her. But we managed. I'm sure you did. Grace patted Chioma's hand. Well, welcome to the family, I suppose. Though I still think this was all too rushed. Ezekiel, we need to talk later. Later, Ezekiel agreed, his voice firm enough that even his mother didn't argue. The rest of the reception passed in a blur of forced smiles and uncomfortable conversations. Chioma met Ezekiel's 2 brothers, Chike and Emeka, both less intimidating than Ezekiel but still clearly cut from the same cloth. She met aunts and uncles and cousins, all of them eyeing her with varying degrees of confusion and suspicion. Through it all, Ezekiel stayed close to her, his hand on her back, his arm around her shoulders, playing the role of devoted husband so convincingly that Chioma almost believed it herself. Almost. Finally, mercifully, it was over. Ezekiel's driver pulled up in a sleek black Mercedes, and they made their escape. Your family doesn't like me, Chioma said quietly as they drove through Lagos traffic. My family doesn't like anyone, Ezekiel replied. Don't take it personally. Your mother thinks this is fake. My mother thinks everything I do is suspicious. She'll come around. He glanced at her. You did well today. I barely said anything. Exactly. You didn't oversell it. That was smart. Chioma looked out the window, watching the city lights blur past. Where are we going? Home. Your home. Our home now. The words made something in Chioma's chest tighten. This was real. She'd actually done this. She'd married a stranger to save her father. God help her. Ezekiel's house was in Lekki, in one of those gated communities where security guards checked your ID before letting you through. The house itself was not what Chioma expected. It was big, yes, but not ostentatiously so. 2 stories, modern architecture, painted a warm cream color. The compound was well maintained with neat gardens and a small fountain near the entrance. "It's nice," Chioma said, surprised. "You expected something different?" Ezekiel asked as he unlocked the front door. "I don't know what I expected. A lair? A fortress?" Was that almost a smile on his face? "I saved the lair for my weekend house." Was he joking? Chioma looked at him sharply, but his expression was back to neutral. The inside of the house was just as surprising as the outside. Clean, modern furniture. Soft lighting. Art on the walls. Actual art, not prints, from what Chioma could tell. It looked like a home, not a bachelor pad. "Did you decorate this yourself?" she asked. "I hired someone." Ezekiel set down the small bag Chioma had brought. She'd moved most of her belongings earlier in the week. "Let me show you to your room." He led her upstairs and down a hallway to a door at the end. When he opened it, Chioma's breath caught. The room was beautiful. A large bed with crisp white linens. A dresser and vanity. A door that led to what looked like a private bathroom. Windows that overlooked the garden. It was easily 3 times the size of her room at her father's apartment. "This is mine?" she asked softly. "Yes. My room is at the other end of the hall. You have your own bathroom. The closet is already stocked with clothes in your size. If anything doesn't fit or you don't like it, let me know and we'll replace it." Chioma turned to stare at him. "You bought me clothes? You needed appropriate attire for being my wife. Don't worry, my sister helped pick everything out. I'm not that presumptuous." "You have a sister?" "2. You didn't meet them today, they both live abroad." Ezekiel leaned against the doorframe. "Is the room acceptable?" It's beautiful." Chioma felt overwhelmed suddenly. "Ezekiel, this is all too much. It's just a room." "It's not just a room. She gestured helplessly. "You didn't have to do all this. The wedding, the dress, this room. You could have just signed papers and been done with it. I told you. It needs to look real." "For who?" "Your family already suspects something. Then we'll prove them wrong." He straightened up. "Get some rest. It's been a long day. If you need anything, my room is at the other end of the hall." "I remember." Chioma took a breath. "Ezekiel." "Yes. Thank you. For clearing my father's debt. Whatever else this is, whatever happens, thank you for that." Something flickered in his dark eyes. "You're welcome. Good night, Chioma." He closed the door softly, leaving her alone in her beautiful new room, in her beautiful new house with her terrifying new husband. Chioma sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself feel everything she'd been holding back all day. The fear, the uncertainty, the strange, disorienting sense that she'd stepped into someone else's life. She was married to Ezekiel Nnamdi for 2 years. What had she done? Living with Ezekiel was strange. He was gone most of the day. Work, he'd say, though Chioma tried not to think too hard about what exactly his work entailed. He left early, usually before she woke up, and came home late, often after she'd gone to bed. When they were in the house together, he was unfailingly polite but distant. He didn't try to make conversation. Didn't ask about her day. Didn't seem to want anything from her at all. It should have been a relief. It wasn't. Chioma found herself feeling oddly lonely, which was ridiculous. She barely knew this man. She shouldn't want his attention or his company. But the house was so quiet, and she was so used to her father's constant chatter, his warmth, his presence. Here, she felt like a ghost haunting someone else's life. On the 4th day, she decided to explore. Ezekiel had told her she had free run of the house, so she wandered through rooms she hadn't seen yet. A study with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A gym that looked professionally equipped. A kitchen that was probably amazing but that Chioma was almost afraid to use because it was so pristine. And then she found the locked door. It was on the 2nd floor, tucked away in a corner she almost missed. She tried the handle automatically, expecting it to open like all the others had. It didn't. "That room is private." Chioma jumped and spun around. Ezekiel stood at the end of the hallway, still in his work clothes, black shirt, black pants, looking as dangerous and controlled as ever. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I was just exploring. You said I could. You can go anywhere in the house except that room." His voice was flat. "Understood. Yes. Of course. I didn't mean to." But he was already walking away, down the stairs, leaving Chioma standing in the hallway feeling like she'd done something terribly wrong. That night, they ate dinner in painful silence. Ezekiel had ordered food from a nearby restaurant. He didn't seem to cook, and Chioma hadn't offered yet. She picked at her jollof rice, acutely aware of him sitting across from her, eating methodically, his face unreadable. "I'm sorry about earlier," she said finally. "The locked room. I wasn't trying to snoop." "It's fine. It doesn't feel fine." Ezekiel set down his fork and looked at her. Really looked at her, those dark eyes pinning her in place. "That room contains personal items. Things from my past. I don't like people going in there." "Okay. I understand. Do you?" He tilted his head slightly. "Because you look like you have questions." Chioma did have questions. 1,000 of them. But she also knew when to push and when to back off. "Everyone has things they want to keep private," she said instead. "I won't bother that room again." Something in his expression eased, just slightly. "Thank you." They finished dinner in more comfortable silence. As Chioma was clearing the plates, Ezekiel spoke again. "Your father called today." Chioma's hands froze. "What?" "He wanted to make sure you were all right." "I told him you were fine." "You didn't let me talk to him?" "You were out." "I left his number on the counter in the kitchen. Call him back if you want." "Oh." Chioma felt foolish for her defensive reaction. "Thank you." "Chioma." She looked up at him. "You're not a prisoner here. You can call whoever you want, go wherever you want. You just need to let me know if you'll be out late so I don't worry." "You'd worry?" The question came out more skeptical than she'd intended. But Ezekiel didn't seem offended. "You're my wife. Of course I'd worry. Your fake wife. Wife nonetheless." He stood up. "I have work to finish. Good night." And just like that, he was gone again, leaving Chioma alone with her thoughts and the lingering question of whether Ezekiel Nnamdi was exactly what he seemed, or something else entirely. "Tell me about him." Chioma's best friend, Ada, was practically vibrating with curiosity across the small cafe table. They'd finally managed to meet up, and Ada had been interrogating Chioma for the past 20 minutes. "There's not much to tell," Chioma said, stirring her tea. "He's quiet. Reserved." "Reserved?" "Chioma, the man is a debt collector. Everyone in Lagos knows his reputation. He's terrifying." "He's not terrifying." Ada's eyebrows shot up. "Really? Because at your wedding, you looked like you were about to faint." "I was nervous." "That's normal." "And now?" "Now." Chioma paused. How could she explain it? "He's different than I expected. He's not violent or cruel. He leaves me alone, mostly. Gives me space." "That doesn't sound like a marriage." "It's not a normal marriage." "Clearly." Ada leaned forward. "Be honest with me, Chi, are you happy?" Was she happy? Chioma considered the question. She wasn't unhappy, exactly. But she wasn't happy either. She was existing. In this strange limbo where she was married but not really, living in a beautiful house with a man she didn't know. "I'm fine," she said finally. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now." Ada sighed. "Just be careful, okay? I know he cleared your father's debt, and that's amazing. But Chi, you don't really know this man. You don't know what he's capable of. I know he has a locked room he won't talk about," Chioma thought. "I know he works late and comes home sometimes with bruises on his knuckles. I know he's unfailingly polite, but completely closed off. I know absolutely nothing about him. I'll be careful," she promised. When she got home that evening, she found Ezekiel in the kitchen. Actually in the kitchen, not just passing through. He was standing at the stove, stirring something in a pot, and he'd removed his usual black shirt, leaving him in a white undershirt that showed off his muscular arms. And the scars. God, there were so many scars. Not just on his face, but covering his arms in a roadmap of violence and pain. Some were thin and surgical looking. Others were thick and jagged, like they'd been made by something, or someone trying to do maximum damage. Chioma must have made a sound, because Ezekiel turned around. His expression flickered when he saw her staring, and he immediately reached for his shirt. "Don't," Chioma said quickly. "I mean, you don't have to cover up on my account. It's your house." "Our house," he corrected automatically. Then, after a pause, "They're not pleasant to look at. They're part of you. The worst part." Chioma set down her bag and moved closer, careful not to crowd him. "Did it hurt? When you got them?" "Yes." "Do you want to talk about it?" "No." She should have backed off. She knew she should. But something in his voice, in the careful way he was holding himself, made her push just a little further. "Okay," she said softly. "But if you ever do want to talk, I'm here." Ezekiel stared at her for a long moment. Then, quietly, "Why would you care?" "Because you're my husband. Fake or not, that means something to me." "It shouldn't." "Well, it does." Chioma gestured to the pot. "What are you making?" The change of subject was obvious, but but Ezekiel accepted it. Trying to make pepper soup. I'm not very good at cooking. Do you want help? You cook. My mother taught me before she died. I'm not amazing, but I'm decent. For the first time since she'd met him, Ezekiel looked uncertain. I don't want to impose. You're not imposing. I live here too. Might as well make myself useful. Chioma moved to the stove and peered into the pot. Okay, first problem. You're using too much pepper. No wonder it smells like it could strip paint. I followed the recipe. Recipes are guidelines, not laws. She reached for a spoon. Here, let me show you. They cooked together for the next hour, Chioma teaching Ezekiel how to balance flavors, how to know when meat was properly tender, how to adjust seasoning by taste rather than measurement. He was a surprisingly attentive student, watching carefully, asking questions, not too proud to admit when he didn't know something. And slowly, gradually, Chioma realized she was having fun. Try this, she said, holding up a spoonful of the soup. Ezekiel leaned in and tasted it. His eyes widened slightly. That's good. That's because I saved it from your pepper assault. Chioma grinned. See, you just need the right teacher. I had the right teacher. Ezekiel's voice was quiet. Thank you. The moment stretched between them, suddenly weighted with something Chioma couldn't quite name. She was very aware of how close they were standing, of the heat radiating from his body, of the way his dark eyes were fixed on her face. You're welcome, she said, her voice coming out softer than she'd intended. They ate the soup together at the kitchen island, sitting side by side instead of across the formal dining table. It felt more intimate somehow, more real. This is nice, Chioma said after a while. The soup? Yes. But also this. Talking. Being in the same room without it feeling awkward. Ezekiel was quiet for a moment. I'm not good at this. At what? People. Conversation. Being. He gestured vaguely. Normal. You seem pretty normal to me right now. That's because you don't know me. Then let me know you. The words came out before Chioma could stop them. I know this isn't a real marriage, but we're stuck with each other for 2 years. Wouldn't it be easier if we were at least friends? Friends. He said the word like he was testing it out. I don't have friends. What about those men who work with you? They work for me. That's different. Okay, what about your brothers? They're family. Also different. Chioma set down her spoon. So you're telling me you have no one in your life who just talks to you? Who knows you beyond your work? No. The simple answer broke something in Chioma's chest. She tried to imagine living like that, completely isolated, completely alone, and couldn't. Even at her loneliest, she'd had her father. She'd had Ada. She'd had her students who hugged her and told her about their days. Ezekiel had no one. Well, she said firmly, you have me now. So you're going to have to get used to conversation and being normal. Fair warning, I talk a lot. My father says it's my defining characteristic. I've noticed. Was that a joke? Did the great Ezekiel Nnamdi just make a joke? The corner of his mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. Maybe. Progress. Chioma bumped her shoulder against his. See, this isn't so bad, is it? No, Ezekiel said quietly. It's not bad at all. Things shifted after that night. Ezekiel still left early and came home late, but now he made an effort to eat dinner with Chioma. They cooked together more often. Or rather, Chioma cooked while Ezekiel watched and learned, asking questions about techniques and ingredients like he was studying for an exam. He was still reserved, still careful with his words, but Chioma was starting to see glimpses of the person beneath the armor. The way his eyes crinkled slightly when he was amused. The dry, subtle humor that appeared when she least expected it. The surprising gentleness in his large hands when he helped her chop vegetables. You're left-handed, she observed one evening, watching him awkwardly try to cut an onion. Yes. Why? Most of my kitchen tools are set up for right-handed people. No wonder you're struggling. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a different knife. Try this one. He did, and immediately the cutting became smoother. How did you know I'd need this? I'm a teacher. Part of my job is noticing things about people and adapting to help them. She smiled. Also, you've been cursing at that onion for 5 minutes. I don't curse. You were doing it in your head. I could tell. That almost smile again. Maybe. Chioma was learning his tells. The slight softening around his eyes when he was relaxed. The way his shoulders tensed when something bothered him. The unconscious way he touched the scar on his face when he was thinking. She wanted to know the story behind that scar. Behind all of them. Ezekiel, she said carefully, not looking up from the peppers she was deasting. Can I ask you something? You're going to anyway. Fair point. Why did you really want to get married? His hands stilled. I told you. My family was pressuring me. I know that's part of it. But there's more, isn't there? Chioma glanced at him. You could have ignored your family's pressure. You're clearly not someone who does things just because other people want you to. Ezekiel was quiet for so long that Chioma thought he wouldn't answer. Then, softly, people are less suspicious of a married man. Suspicious how? In my line of work, being single makes people think you're unpredictable. Dangerous. They don't trust you. He set down the knife. A wife makes you seem stable. Settled. It opens doors that were previously closed. So I'm a business asset. Yes. He met her eyes. But that's not all you are. Chioma's heart did a strange little flip. What else am I? I don't know yet. His gaze was intense, searching. But I'm starting to think you're more than I bargained for. Good more or bad more? I haven't decided. She threw a piece of pepper at him. He caught it without even looking, that ghost of a smile appearing again. Show off, Chioma muttered. Fast reflexes are necessary in my job. Which is? He gave her a look. Right. Mysterious debt collector business that you won't talk about. She sighed dramatically. You know, most husbands tell their wives about their work. Most wives don't marry their husbands to pay off debts. Touché. Chioma started cleaning up their workspace. But seriously, Ezekiel, I know what you do. Generally. But I don't know how you do it. What your days look like. You don't want to know. Actually, I do. Why? Because, Chioma paused, trying to articulate the feeling that had been growing in her chest. Because you're not just my fake husband anymore. You're becoming my friend. And I want to understand my friends. Ezekiel stared at her like she'd just said something in a foreign language. You consider me a friend? Getting there, yeah. She smiled. Is that okay? He looked almost lost. I don't know how to be someone's friend. You're doing fine so far. Just keep being you. Chioma moved closer, daring to touch his arm lightly. The real you. Not the scary debt collector everyone thinks you are. His eyes dropped to where her hand rested on his scarred forearm. What if the scary debt collector is the real me? I don't believe that. Why not? Because scary debt collectors don't struggle with cutting onions. They don't ask careful questions about their wife's day. They don't. She stopped, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, of the heat in his dark eyes. They don't what? His voice had dropped lower. They don't look at me the way you're looking at me right now. The air between them crackled with sudden tension. Ezekiel's hand came up slowly, giving her plenty of time to move away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her cheek, so gentle it made her shiver. How am I looking at you? He asked softly. Like I'm precious. You are. The words were simple, but the way he said them, like a confession, like a revelation, made Chioma's breath catch. Ezekiel. The front door slammed open. They jumped apart as one of Ezekiel's men, the one called Tund, burst into the house, breathing hard. Boss, we have a problem. Ezekiel's entire demeanor changed instantly. The gentle man who'd been touching Chioma's face vanished, replaced by something cold and dangerous. What kind of problem? The Okoro brothers. They're saying you cheated them. They're coming here. When? Now. Maybe 10 minutes. Ezekiel's jaw clenched. He turned to Chioma. Go upstairs. Lock yourself in your room. Don't come out until I tell you. What's happening? Chioma's heart was racing. Who are the Okoro brothers? Men I did business with. It went badly. He was already moving toward the door. Chioma, please. Just do what I say. But, now. The command was sharp enough that Chioma flinched. She ran upstairs, her hands shaking as she locked her bedroom door. From the window, she could see 3 cars pulling up to the house. Large men got out, and even from a distance, she could see they were angry. She could hear shouting. Ezekiel's voice calm but firm. Another voice louder, aggressive. Then the sound of something breaking. Chioma pressed her hand to her mouth, trying not to panic. What was happening down there? Was Ezekiel okay? Should she call someone? But who? More shouting. A thud. Someone crying out in pain. She couldn't take it anymore. Chioma unlocked her door and crept to the top of the stairs, staying low so she wouldn't be seen. The living room was a disaster. Broken furniture. Shattered glass. And in the middle of it all was Ezekiel, facing down 3 men, his shirt torn, blood dripping from a cut above his eye. I don't owe you anything, Okoro, Ezekiel said, his voice deadly calm. Your brother borrowed money. Your brother couldn't pay. That's not my problem. You broke his arm, the largest man shouted. He pulled a knife on me. I defended myself. Ezekiel's eyes were cold. If you have a problem with that, take it up with the people who hired me. We're taking it up with you. The man lunged. Ezekiel moved faster than Chioma would have thought possible for someone his size, sidestepping and landing a brutal punch to the man's ribs. The man went down hard. The other two attacked together. Ezekiel fought like something wild and controlled at the same time, all efficient violence and brutal precision. He was terrifying and magnificent, and Chioma couldn't look away. It was over in less than a minute. All three men were on the floor, groaning. Ezekiel stood over them, barely winded, his knuckles bloody. Get out, he said quietly. And don't come back. Next time, I won't be so gentle. Tund and another man appeared from somewhere, hauling the Okoro brothers to their feet and dragging them out. Ezekiel stood in the middle of his destroyed living room, his chest heaving, blood dripping onto the floor. Then his eyes snapped up to where Chioma was crouched on the stairs. I told you to stay in your room. I heard fighting. I was worried. You were worried? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You should be terrified. You just saw what I am, Chioma. What I do. This is my life. Violence and blood and broken bones. Chioma stood up slowly and walked down the stairs. Ezekiel watched her approach with something like disbelief in his eyes, like he couldn't understand why she wasn't running away. She stopped in front of him, taking in the cut above his eye, the bruise forming on his jaw, the blood on his knuckles. You're hurt, she said softly. I'm fine. You're bleeding. I've bled before. That doesn't mean you should do it now. Chioma reached for his hand. He tried to pull away, but she held firm. Come on. Let me clean you up. Chioma. Sit. Down. Something in her tone made him obey. He sat heavily on the one piece of furniture still intact, an ottoman, while Chioma ran to get the first aid kit. When she came back, she knelt in front of him, carefully cleaning the blood from his face. He watched her the entire time, his expression unreadable. You should be afraid of me, he said quietly. I'm not. You should be. You saw what I did. I saw you defend yourself and your home. Chioma dabbed antiseptic on the cut, and he hissed slightly. Sorry. This might sting. Why aren't you afraid? She paused, considering the question. Why wasn't she? She should be. She just watched her husband, her fake husband, brutally beat 3 men. She should be running for the door. But all she felt was concern. For him. For his wounds. For the pain she saw in his eyes that had nothing to do with physical injuries. Because I've seen you with me, she said finally. I've seen how gentle you are. How careful. You're only violent when you have to be. That's different. Is it? Yes. She finished with his face and moved to his hands, cleaning the split knuckles. Violence isn't who you are, Ezekiel. It's just what you do to survive. You don't know that. Yes, I do. She looked up at him. Because if you were truly violent, truly dangerous, you wouldn't have given me my own room. You wouldn't cook dinner with me. You wouldn't look at me like I'm precious. She squeezed his hand gently. You're not a monster, Ezekiel Nnamdi. No matter what you think. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, his hand turned in hers, his fingers lacing through hers. You're either very brave or very foolish, he said. Maybe both. Definitely both. His thumb brushed over her knuckles. Thank you. For not running. Where would I run to? This is my home now, too. Something shifted in his expression. Something warm and vulnerable that Chioma had never seen before. Is it? Does it feel like home? It's starting to. His other hand came up to cup her face, his touch feather-light despite the violence those hands had just committed. Chioma. Yes. I'm trying very hard not to kiss you right now. Her breath caught. Why? Because if I start, I don't think I'll be able to stop. The admission hung between them, heavy and electric. Chioma's heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. Maybe, she whispered. You shouldn't stop. Ezekiel's eyes darkened. This wasn't part of the deal. I know. We're supposed to be fake. I know that too. Then why? Because I'm tired of pretending, Chioma said, surprised by her own honesty. Because when you look at me like that, I forget this is supposed to be an arrangement. Because He kissed her. It wasn't gentle like their wedding kiss. This was desperate and hungry, like he'd been holding himself back for weeks and finally snapped. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back, and Chioma melted into him, her hands clutching his torn shirt. This was real. This was so incredibly real. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ezekiel rested his forehead against hers. "We shouldn't do this," he said, even as his arms tightened around her. "Probably not. It will complicate everything." "I know. Chioma." "Shut up, Ezekiel." She pulled him down for another kiss. "For once in your life, just shut up and feel something." So he did. Everything changed after that night. They didn't talk about it, what it meant, where they stood, what happened to their 2-year arrangement. They just were. Ezekiel still had his room at one end of the hall. Chioma still had hers at the other. But more nights than not, she'd wake up to find him beside her, his arm heavy around her waist, his breathing deep and steady. He never stayed the whole night. Always slipped away before dawn, back to his own room, maintaining the pretense that they were still separate. But during the day, things were different. He touched her now. Casual touches, a hand on her back as he passed her in the kitchen, his fingers brushing her hair from her face. His arms slung around her shoulders as they watched TV together. And the way he looked at her. God, the way he looked at her. Like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. "I have to go to an event tonight," Ezekiel said one evening, watching Chioma cook. "A business function. You should come." "Me? Why?" "Because you're my wife. It would look strange if you weren't there." Chioma turned to face him. "Is this another maintain appearances thing?" "Partly." He moved closer. "Mostly I just want you there." "That's new." "A lot of things are new." His hands settled on her waist. "Is that okay? Was it okay?" A month ago, Chioma would have said no. Would have reminded him this was fake, temporary, not real. Now she leaned into him, her hands resting on his chest, feeling his heart beat under her palms. "Yes," she said softly. "It's okay." The event was at a hotel in Victoria Island. One of those upscale networking things where wealthy people pretended to care about charity while really just showing off. Chioma wore one of the dresses Ezekiel's sister had picked out, a deep emerald green that hugged her curves and made her feel beautiful and terrified in equal measure. "You look incredible," Ezekiel said when he saw her, and the heat in his eyes made her blush. "You clean up pretty well yourself." He did. The tailored suit emphasized his broad shoulders and narrow hips. He'd left his face unshaven, the slight scruff making him look dangerous and sophisticated at the same time. They arrived fashionably late. Chioma could feel eyes on them immediately, curious, assessing eyes. She gripped Ezekiel's arm a little tighter. "Nervous?" he asked quietly. "Terrified." "Don't be. Just stay close to me." His hand covered hers, warm and reassuring. "I've got you." And he did. Throughout the night, Ezekiel kept her close, his hand always somewhere on her back, her waist, her arm. Claiming her. Protecting her. When people approached to talk business, he introduced her proudly. When men looked at her a little too long, his arm tightened possessively around her. "Your husband is very attentive," one woman commented, her eyes sharp with curiosity. "He is," Chioma agreed, smiling. "And you two met how?" "Through a mutual acquaintance." "How romantic." The woman's tone suggested she found it anything but. "You know what people say about Ezekiel Nnamdi, don't you?" "I know what people say," Chioma replied calmly. "I also know the truth." "And what's that?" "That he's mine." The possessiveness in her own voice surprised Chioma, but she didn't take it back. Because it was true. Somewhere in the past month, Ezekiel had become hers. And she had become his. When had that happened? "Dance with me," Ezekiel said suddenly, appearing at her elbow. "I don't really dance." But he was already leading her to the floor, pulling her into his arms with an authority that made her knees weak. "I thought you didn't like public displays," she teased as they swayed to the slow music. "I don't." His hand splayed across her lower back, pressing her closer. "But I don't like other men looking at you more." "Possessive much?" "When it comes to you." "Yes." Chioma's breath caught. "Ezekiel, I know what this was supposed to be," he said quietly, his eyes intense on hers. "I know we had a deal. 2 years, then done. But Chioma, Nnamdi." They both turned. A man was approaching, tall, well-dressed, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Something about him made Chioma's skin crawl. "Chief Adelik," Ezekiel said, his voice carefully neutral. But Chioma felt him tense. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I could say the same." Adelik's eyes slid to Chioma, assessing her like she was a piece of meat. "And who is this beautiful creature?" "My wife." "Wife?" Adelik laughed. "The infamous Ezekiel Nnamdi married? I never thought I'd see the day." He extended his hand to Chioma. "Pleasure to meet you, my dear." Chioma shook his hand reluctantly, fighting the urge to wipe her palm on her dress afterward. "We should talk, Nnamdi," Adelik said. "Business. Not tonight. It's important." "I said not tonight." Ezekiel's voice had taken on that dangerous edge Chioma had heard before. "I'm with my wife." Of course, of course." Adelik smiled again, that oily, unpleasant smile. "Another time then. Lovely to meet you, Mrs. Nnamdi. Take care of this one, he's quite valuable." When he walked away, Ezekiel's entire body was rigid with tension. "Who was that?" Chioma asked quietly. "Someone I used to work for." "Used to? It's complicated." He took her hand. "Come on. We're leaving." "But the event." "I don't care about the event." His eyes were dark with something Chioma couldn't quite read. Anger, maybe, or fear. "I need to get you out of here. Now." They left without saying goodbye to anyone. In the car, Ezekiel was silent, his jaw clenched, his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. "Talk to me," Chioma said finally. "What was that about?" "Who is Chief Adelik?" "A very dangerous man." "More dangerous than you?" "Much more dangerous than me." Ezekiel's voice was tight. "I used to collect debts for him. Before I went independent. He didn't take it well when I left." "What does that mean?" "It means," he stopped himself, taking a deep breath. "It means he's been looking for leverage against me for years. And tonight, I gave it to him." "Me," Chioma whispered, understanding. "I'm the leverage." Ezekiel didn't answer, which was answer enough. When they got home, he went straight to the locked room. Chioma watched him unlock it with shaking hands and disappear inside. She knew she should give him space, should leave him alone. She followed him instead. The room was small and sparse. A desk with a computer. File cabinets. And covering one entire wall, photographs. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all connected by red string like something from a detective movie. "What is all this?" Chioma breathed. Ezekiel spun around, his face going pale when he saw her. "You shouldn't be in here." "What is all this?" she repeated. He was quiet for a long moment. Then heavily, "Evidence. Cases. People who've been hurt by men like Adelik. I've been collecting information. Building a case." "Against who?" "Everyone." He gestured to the wall. "All the people I used to work for. All the corrupt officials who protect them. All the systems that let them hurt people without consequences." His voice was raw. "I've spent 5 years documenting everything. Every debt, every threat, every broken bone. I was going to take it to the authorities once I had enough." Chioma stared at the wall, at the faces of victims, at the intricate web of connections Ezekiel had built. "This is why you needed to look respectable. Why you needed a wife." "Yes. I needed people to trust me. To think I was settling down, becoming stable. So they'd let their guards down." He looked at her. "You were supposed to be part of the cover. Nothing more. But you became more." The words sounded torn from him. "You became everything. And now Adelik has seen you, knows you're important to me, and I've put you in danger. The one thing I swore I'd never do." Chioma's heart was racing. She should be angry. She was part of his plan, another tool, another piece of evidence. She should feel used. But all she felt was heartbreak for this man who'd spent 5 years alone, carrying the weight of other people's pain, trying to make things right in the only way he knew how. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked quietly. "Because the less you knew, the safer you'd be. And now you know. Now you're in danger." He turned away from her. "We should end this. The marriage. Get you somewhere safe before." "No. Chioma. No." She moved to stand in front of him, forcing him to look at her. "I'm not leaving. I'm not running. If you think I'm going to abandon you now, you don't understand what you're saying. These men, Adelik, they don't play games. If they think you're important to me, they'll use you against me. They'll hurt you. Then we'll be careful. That's not enough. It has to be enough." Chioma grabbed his face, making him meet her eyes. "Because I'm not leaving you, Ezekiel. I'm not. Do you understand me?" "Why?" The question was anguished. "Why would you stay? I lied to you. I used you. I've put you in danger. Because I love you, you idiot." The words echoed in the small room. Chioma's eyes widened. She hadn't meant to say that. Hadn't even fully admitted it to herself. But it was true. Somewhere between the awkward dinners and the cooking lessons and the gentle touches, she'd fallen in love with Ezekiel Nnamdi. With his scarred hands and his terrible jokes and his careful kindness. With the way he looked at her like she was precious. With the broken, lonely man behind the dangerous facade. "You can't love me," Ezekiel said, but his hands had come up to grip her waist like he was afraid she'd disappear. Too late. Chioma, do you love me? She asked, her heart in her throat. He closed his eyes. More than anything. Then we face this together. It's too dangerous. I don't care. I care. He opened his eyes, and they were shining with unshed tears. God help me. I care so much it terrifies me. I can't lose you. I can't. She kissed him, swallowing his protests, pouring everything she felt into the kiss. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. You're not going to lose me, she whispered. We're going to finish what you started. Together. And then we're going to have a real marriage. A real life. Together. You make it sound so simple. Maybe it is simple. Maybe we've been making it complicated. Ezekiel laughed softly, the sound breaking. Nothing about this is simple. Then we'll figure it out. She pulled back to look at him. But we do it together. No more secrets. No more protecting me by pushing me away. We're in this together or not at all. Your choice. He stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. Together, he agreed. And then softer. I love you, Chioma. I love you too. They stayed in that room for hours, Ezekiel explaining everything. The evidence he'd gathered, the people he was targeting, the risks they faced. Chioma listened, asked questions, made suggestions. Becoming his partner in truth, not just in name. And when they finally went to bed that night, Ezekiel didn't leave before dawn. He stayed. Being partners with Ezekiel meant learning the truth about his work. All of it. He took her to his office, introduced her to his team, showed her the legitimate side of his business, a security consulting firm that helped businesses recover debts through legal means. This is what I do now, he explained. No more breaking bones. No more threats. Just legal pressure and documentation. But you used to do the other thing, Chioma said. The violence. Yes. He didn't look away from her. I'm not proud of it, but it's how I learned who the real criminals were, who was exploiting people, who needed to be stopped. And the scars. His hand went automatically to his face. From when I worked for Adelic. He didn't like employees who asked too many questions. One day, I asked the wrong question about where certain payments were going. He smiled bitterly. He had his men teach me a lesson. They were very thorough. Chioma's throat tightened. How did you escape? I didn't. Not for 3 days. They kept me in a warehouse, and every time I passed out, they'd wake me up and start again. His voice was matter of fact, but she could see the remembered pain in his eyes. When they finally let me go, I was barely alive. Spent 2 months in hospital. And you're going after him? After what he did to you? Especially after what he did to me. Ezekiel's eyes were hard. Because if he did it to me, he's done it to others. And he needs to be stopped. How long until you have enough evidence? Soon. Maybe a few more months. I have most of what I need, financial records, witness testimony, documentation of illegal activities. I just need one more piece. What piece? A ledger. Adelic keeps a physical record of all his transactions, the illegal ones. If I can get my hands on that, I can connect him to everything. Money laundering, extortion, assault, even murder. Where is it? In his house. In a safe in his private study. Chioma's eyes widened. You're going to break into his house? No. I'm going to get invited in. Ezekiel took her hand. He's hosting a party next month. All the important people in Lagos will be there. Politicians, businessmen, criminals pretending to be respectable. He invites me every year. I've never gone before. But you're going this time. We are. Both of us. He squeezed her hand. As my wife, you'll have access to parts of the house I won't. While everyone's distracted by the party, you can slip into his study and photograph the ledger. You want me to spy on one of the most dangerous men in Lagos? I want you safe at home. But I need that ledger, and this is the only way. Chioma's mind was racing. This was insane. Completely insane. She was a teacher, not a spy. She had no idea how to break into safes or photograph secret ledgers. But she looked at Ezekiel, at the hope and fear warring in his eyes, and knew she'd do it anyway. Okay, she said. Okay, I'll do it. But you have to teach me. How to pick locks, how to avoid security, how to... Chioma, you said we're partners. That means I'm all in. She lifted her chin. So teach me. He did. For the next month, Ezekiel trained her. How to move quietly. How to pick simple locks. How to use a micro camera. How to stay calm under pressure. The most important thing, he told her one evening as they practiced, is to not panic. If something goes wrong, if someone sees you, stay calm. Make up a story. You got lost looking for the bathroom. You were admiring the art. Whatever sounds believable. And if they don't believe me, then you find me. Immediately. And we leave. What if we can't leave? Ezekiel's jaw clenched. We'll cross that bridge if we come to it. But Chioma could see the fear in his eyes. He was terrified for her, terrified of what might happen. And that made her even more determined to succeed. I won't let you down, she promised. You could never let me down. He pulled her close. But Chioma, if anything happens, if you're in danger, forget the ledger. Forget everything. Just get yourself safe. Promise me. I promise. He kissed her then, deep and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. When they pulled apart, his forehead rested against hers. I should never have gotten you involved in this, he whispered. Too late. I'm involved. She smiled. Besides, you're stuck with me now. For better or worse, remember? Those were just words. Not anymore. The night of the party arrived too quickly. Chioma stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her dress, a stunning red gown that Ezekiel had insisted she wear. You need to look like you belong, he'd said. Like you're just another wealthy wife enjoying her husband's success. Behind her, Ezekiel fastened a delicate necklace around her throat. His fingers lingered on her skin, and she could feel them trembling slightly. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. We can find another way. There is no other way. Chioma met his eyes in the mirror. We've been over this, Ezekiel. This is our best chance. I know. He stopped, his hands settling on her shoulders. If anything happens to you, I'll never forgive myself. Nothing's going to happen. She turned to face him, straightening his bow tie. He looked devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, all sharp lines and controlled power. We have a plan. We've practiced. It's going to work. You sound so confident. One of us has to be. She smiled, trying to ease the tension in his face. Besides, I have you watching my back. What could go wrong? Don't say that. You'll jinx it. Since when are you superstitious? Since I fell in love with a woman brave enough to rob one of the most dangerous men in Nigeria. He cupped her face gently. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise. She rose on her toes to kiss him. I love you. I love you too. His arms tightened around her. So much. They stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other, drawing strength from each other's presence. Then Ezekiel pulled back, his expression shifting into something harder, more controlled. The mask he wore when he was working. Ready? He asked. As I'll ever be.